When most people hear the word cockroach, they think of dark kitchens and creepy crawlies hiding under the fridge. And termites, probably just pests chewing through your house. But what if I told you that these insects belong to the same order, and that they've been shaping ecosystems and even human history since the dawn of time? Today, we're exploring the secret lives of cockroaches and termites, their anatomy, their evolution, their incredible societies, and some of the strangest species you've probably never heard of. And maybe I can convince you that these little insects are actually quite lovable. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bug of the Week, brought to you by Lil Dudes Insect Academy. And as you can tell, I am back at school in my apartment with my nice mic, so hopefully quality is a lot better now, but I'm happy to be back. I'm taking some really cool classes, starting some research this semester, so I've got lots of stuff coming y'all's way, but I'm excited for the future of this channel. So if you're new here, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and leaving a comment about your new favorite fun fact about Blattodea. And on this episode, in our long journey through all of the insect orders, we have arrived at Blattodea. Order Blattodea is comprised of around 8,000 species worldwide, including the cockroaches and their social cousins, the termites. That's right, termites are actually just highly social cockroaches. And for a long time, scientists put them in their own order called Isoptera. But recent DNA evidence revealed that termites actually might have evolved from a wood-eating cockroach ancestor, probably similar to the extant cockroach genus Cryptocercus, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. But first, as always, let's begin with the anatomy of Blattodea, starting with the cockroaches. Cockroaches have flat, oval-shaped bodies perfect for squeezing between cracks and crevices. They have long, whip-like filiform antennae, which they are always probing the air back and forth with. And one of the big identifying features of a cockroach is a shield-like plate behind the head that covers the top of the head, and that's called the pronotum. So they have a pronotum that extends and covers the top of their head, kind of like a hat or a helmet of some kind. With the wings, they have a front pair that are leathery tegmina, which we've talked about a little bit before, and then the rear pair are membranous. And they don't really use them for flying very well. Like, they can't really take flight from the ground, but you can often find roaches that will be gliding or maybe jumping and gliding, but they won't take vertical flight from the ground, if that makes sense. So they're not very good flyers. Finally, they have spiny legs built for speed. Some can sprint up to 3 miles an hour, which is pretty amazing if it's a little tiny bug. Moving on to termites. Termites have pale, soft bodies, and they're oftentimes confused with ants because they are highly social. So termites are highly social. You will never find a solitary termite. There are no solitary termites that we know of, and they all form complex social groups. They have straight antennae that go out instead of the cockroaches that have the filiform antennae. And one way to tell them apart from ants really easily, and we'll talk about ants later when we get to that episode, but one easy way to tell them apart from ants is they have a broad waist, whereas with the ants, they have a tiny waist, we call it a wasp waist. That's kind of how you tell them apart at a glance. And now finally, if you ever find a winged reproductive termite, both pairs of the wings will be the same size. So they'll have 4 wings total, and they'll all be the same size. So if you ever find a termite that has wings, that's actually a reproductive, gonna go start a new colony. So let's go back to roaches for just a little bit. If you think of cockroaches, you're probably thinking of the pests, right? They'll live in your house, they'll eat your food, they're kind of annoying. But actually, out of the thousands of species of cockroaches, only about 30 of them are household pests, and the rest live peacefully in forests, caves, deserts, you name it. Many act as decomposers, breaking down leaf litter and recycling nutrients back into the soil. So they're really important decomposers. In fact, there is one species of roach that live in caves, in bat caves specifically, and they just live on the ground feeding off of all of the food and feces that the bats drop. That's their whole job. That's all that they do. You will only find these roaches in bat caves. Now here's a myth for you. I'm sure everyone's heard that myth of cockroaches could survive a nuclear apocalypse. And that's not quite true, although they are very resilient, but intense radiation would kill them just like it would us. They're just more resilient than we are. So let's look at some cool roaches. This is an iconic species called the Madagascar hissing cockroach, and they are one of the larger species of cockroach, and they're very popular in the pet trade. They're very slow moving. They don't run around like a lot of the other roaches do, so they make really good pets and really good for insect outreach. And they're called the hissing cockroach because they're able to force air through their spiracles, which are the organs that insects use to breathe. And it sounds like a squeak, like a tiny steam engine almost. Next up is the giant burrowing cockroach. This Australian species is the heaviest cockroach in the world, reaching up to 30 grams. That's equivalent in weight to a mouse. And they actually spend their entire life just digging around and eating leaves. Finally, another popular species in the pet trade is the domino cockroach. They sport bold black and white spots, looking almost more like a ladybug than what most people think of when they hear roach. And so this just shows that cockroaches can be really stylish. Here's a shiny one too. So they can be very cool looking, very charismatic, and they're also very good parents. So many species of female cockroach will actually raise their young. They will not only protect their eggs, they will protect the nymphs, feed them manually. It's amazing. There are even some cockroaches that give live birth. Now, when I say live birth, this is obviously different than mammals. They don't have a placenta. They essentially have an egg case inside of them that protects the eggs, and then the eggs hatch inside of the egg case and then hatch out of the female. So it looks like live birth, but obviously it's different than how mammals do it. Also, similarly to mammals, cockroach mothers are known to secrete cockroach milk. So this is something that's super weird, super crazy, but female cockroaches can actually secrete a protein-rich substance that they feed to their young that we call cockroach milk. In fact, this cockroach milk actually has 4 times the protein than cow's milk does. And yes, the bodybuilders are going to love this, but the problem is that it's not scalable. Scientists have been looking in to see if cockroach milk would be something that is suitable for human consumption. And though it would be safe, it's just not scalable. You would need thousands and thousands of female cockroaches to produce enough milk for even a glass. So they just don't produce enough of it, although it's kind of interesting that they make it. Okay, now on to termites. Termites took a very different path. Instead of living alone or in small groups, they became master builders. Termite societies are divided into castes: workers, soldiers, and reproductive kings and queens. So that's something that is different about ants and the other highly social insects, is that termites have a king, not just a queen. Colonies can range from a few thousand individuals to several million workers. And their architecture, stunning. African mound-building termites construct skyscraper-like towers. However, rather than living in these castles, they actually live underground, basically in the basement of these structures. The above-ground architecture actually serves one important role: temperature and humidity control, basically an air conditioning unit. And if you're curious, this picture is real. This termite mound is actually taller than this giraffe. And it's not a baby giraffe. That's a full-on giraffe. Now, one thing that's really interesting and weird about termites is that they eat cellulose, the tough fiber in wood and plants, which is an extremely rare trait to have. Very few animals are able to digest wood the way that termites can. They aren't just special and able to digest it alone. They actually rely on a symbiotic gut microbe that lives inside of their digestive tract. And in some primitive termite groups, the individuals share those microbes between other colony members to keep the microbes thriving. Now, like I mentioned a second ago, termites are all social. You won't find a solitary termite species. But termites are something that we call eusocial, which is something that I haven't gotten to talk about yet. So I've talked about semi-social, communal, things like that in this series, but I haven't gotten to eusociality. So this is the first group that I can talk about eusociality with. So eusociality is, like I said, the most complex form of sociality that we see in insects. And this term eusociality was originally created by a guy named E.O. Wilson.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
And he created this term for insects. So it was originally created for insects, but it has now extended towards other animals. But basically, a group needs to fall under 3 criteria, all 3 to be considered eusocial. And that would be reproductive division of labor, meaning there are dedicated individuals in the colony that their job is to reproduce, meaning there are some members that will reproduce and some that will not. The second is overlapping generations. This means that at a given time in the colony structure, there can be multiple generations of workers or individuals living at the same time. And finally, the third one, actually segueing into the third one, is cooperative brood care. This means that individuals will help each other care for the young. So this means that they are caring for young that are not necessarily their own offspring. So if there's a species that fulfills all 3 of these criteria, they are deemed eusocial. So some other eusocial insects would be honeybees, all ants, all termites, and some wasps, to name a few. There are some other cool, weird examples that we'll get to later, but those are the main eusocial insects. Side note, there is one mammal that is commonly agreed upon to be eusocial. It's not humans. It's actually naked mole rats. And I'm mentioning that because naked mole rats are basically just termites. If you're curious, I could make a video on naked mole rats, even though they're not bugs. But I would Google it. They're really cool, but naked mole rats are basically giant termites in a lot of ways. Okay, finally, let's talk about some cool termites. First of all, the macrotermes of Africa are the ones that, this picture is from that I mentioned earlier. They actually have fungus gardens in their nests that break down the plant materials. So instead of them having that gut microbes in them, they have a fungus that they cultivate to break down the wood externally. Next is the Nasutermitinae. I don't know this word. Termites produce soldiers with these nozzle-shaped heads that can spray a chemical glue at their enemies, almost like cannons on a castle. Like, it's awesome. Finally, the Cryptocercus wood roaches aren't termites, but I wanted to mention them here because they live in Asia and North America, and they live in family groups inside of rotting logs, and they're considered to be that living link between the solitary roaches and the social termites. So they live in wood, they eat the wood, they live in a family unit. They're almost eusocial, but they're kind of the, in-between point that they think they might have a common ancestor with. So, love them or hate them, Blattodea play vital ecological roles. Cockroaches recycle decaying plant matter, fueling food webs. Termites shape landscapes, enrich soil, and even help plants survive droughts. And without these insects, entire ecosystems would grind to a halt. Now, of course, not every interaction with humans is positive. Some cockroaches can spread disease in cities. Termites cause billions of dollars in damage on homes and buildings every year. But there's another side of it. Scientists actually study cockroaches' nervous systems to design better robots. And in many cultures, termites are eaten as a protein-rich food source. So the next time you hear a cockroach scuttling by or hear about termites munching on wood, remember, Blattodea isn't just about pests. They're survivors, recyclers, architects, and even innovators. With that, thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, definitely leave a like, subscribe, and comment your favorite fun fact or encounter with a member of the order Blattodea. Next week, we are talking about an order called Thysanoptera, also known as the thrips. Very cool order of insects, so you'll want to stick around for that one. But with that, I will see you all next week. But until then, keep on bugging. See ya.